That day, in the incubation room, a Veylari baby hatched from its egg, destined to change the fate of the entire galaxy. It was small, blue, and extremely fragile. The baby cried, screamed. Its tiny hands reached up into the air with hope. It waited for someone to hold it, to feel its warmth, but no one came. For 3 hours, that little creature wailed. Then, its voice grew faint. It fell silent, and finally gave up. The caretakers came. They washed the baby as part of a routine procedure, fed it, but no one held it close, no one embraced it. Because in Veylari culture, physical contact was strictly forbidden. Dr. Sarah Chen, a young human doctor, stood there and made a decision in that moment. She would not obey these cold rules. She reached out and lovingly took the baby in her arms. For the first time in its 3-hour life, someone was touching that baby. The baby trembled slightly at first, then a miraculous expression appeared on its face, and it smiled. The caregivers were shocked. "What did you do?" they asked in amazement. Sarah answered with just one word, motherhood. But they had never heard that word before. They did not know this sacred concept. The incubation room was warm and humid, as usual. It smelled like artificial life support. On the planet Veylari 5, a massive building rose in the very center of the capital Crystal. It was called the Life Center. This was where all Veylari babies said hello to the world. However, the word birth was wrong for Veylari philosophy. They were not born, they emerged from a shell. In their world, there were no concepts of mother and father. There were only genetic data combined in a laboratory environment. This data was transferred to an artificial egg and placed in the incubation room. At the end of 9 months, the baby would break out of its shell and emerge. Completely alone, completely abandoned, caretakers would come. They would sterilize the baby, feed it, and code it into their systems, but they would never touch it, never hold it. According to Veylari belief, physical contact created weakness and dependency. For a species that lived 50,000 years, dependency was an unacceptable flaw. Sarah Chen had been working at this center for 3 years as a medical consultant specializing in the physiological differences between humans and the Veylari species. She was 35 years old, dark-haired, brown-eyed, a woman who carried a deep weariness in her gaze, but was still captivating. She had fled here from Earth, from Boston, 3 years ago. She wanted to get away from the great pain in her heart. Now she stood in the incubation room, watching the 24th egg crack open. The egg was white and shiny, about 60 centimeters tall. The crack widened. First a small blue hand appeared, then its head, with silver eyes and wet hair. The baby fell from the egg onto the cold metal floor and began to cry loudly. Sarah's heart twisted deeply, as it always did. The baby's tiny hands were reaching up. This was a universal grasping reflex common to both humans and Veylari. The baby was looking for a mother, but it had never actually had one. Sarah waited, hoping that maybe this time a rule would be broken, that someone would reach out to the baby. Zara, the 600-year-old caretaker, was just keeping digital records in the corner. Despite being 600 years old, she looked like a human in her 20s. With her blue skin and white hair, she was like a soulless statue. She didn't even look at the baby. Her sole focus was the screen in front of her. The baby wailed for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Sarah couldn't take it anymore and approached Zara. "You need to take the baby right now," she said. Zara looked up in surprise. "Why?" she asked. "Because it's crying," said Sarah. Zara replied indifferently, "Yes, it's crying. That's a normal stress response, and it will stop within an hour." Sarah's voice hardened. "An hour is too long for this little creature." Zara shrugged. "According to our rules, we have to wait 2 hours before starting the cleaning procedure. This is necessary for the baby's independence. Early intervention only creates dependency." Sarah backed away. She clenched her fists. her nails digging into her palms. Time passed. The baby was still crying, but now the sound was weaker, more tired. When 2 hours were up, the crying had completely stopped, replaced by faint hiccups. By the end of the 3rd hour, the baby was completely silent. Its eyes were open, but staring blankly, its hands fallen to its sides. It had given up. The hope for life inside it had faded, because no one responded to it. Sarah saw that moment. That terrible moment of surrender, when the baby's spirit closed in on itself. Her heart broke. Zara approached and said, "The procedure is starting. Doctor, will you assist?" Sarah looked at the baby, then at Zara. "No," she said firmly. Zara was surprised. "No. Yes. No," Sarah repeated. "What you're doing isn't just wrong. It's a huge mistake." Zara frowned. "This is our ancient culture. Doctor, you can't interfere with it." Sarah stepped forward. "Culture? This baby cried for 3 whole hours, all alone. What you're doing is pure torture." Zara replied harshly. "This isn't torture. It's independence training." Sarah laughed bitterly. "What kind of independence do you expect from a 3-hour-old baby?" Zara didn't answer and mechanically began the procedure. Her cold hands, clad in sterile gloves, grasped the baby. Sarah watched. Zara lifted the baby and held it in the air but never cradled it, carrying it as if it were an object. She washed the baby, dried it, dressed it, and placed it in the feeding unit. The baby silently drank the liquid provided. Its eyes were still empty, devoid of any spark of life. Zara said, "The procedure is complete. This baby is now registered as 123. Tomorrow we will move on to the next stage." Sarah looked at the number. It didn't even have a name, just a cold number. The baby's eyes met Sarah's for a moment. It was as if it was silently asking, "Why didn't anyone hold me?" Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe and ran out of the room. Out in the hallway, she leaned against the wall and sobbed. She had been at this center for 3 years and had witnessed hundreds of babies' souls fade away in the same way. She couldn't intervene because of the rules and a foreign culture. At that moment, she remembered Emma, her own baby, whom she had lost 3 years ago, whom she couldn't get enough of holding and cuddling. She hadn't been able to save Emma then, but now there was a living being in front of her. Baby number 123 was alive, and Sarah made a decision. "Never again," she said to herself, "will I watch another baby die while still alive." She returned to the incubation room. Zara had left, and the room was completely silent. Baby number 123 lay there in its small bed, eyes closed. Sarah approached slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. With trembling hands, she touched the baby. Its skin was soft and alive. She gently lifted the baby, cradled it in her arms, and pressed it to her chest. It was the first time in the baby's entire life that it felt a heartbeat, that it felt warmth. The baby stirred, opened its silver eyes, and looked at Sarah. Sarah smiled through her tears. "Hello, little angel," she said. The blank expression on the baby's face instantly melted away, replaced by light and peace. The baby smiled. It was the first real baby smile ever recorded in Veylari history. Just then, the door opened and Zara entered. She froze at the sight before her. "What are you doing?" she shouted. Sarah didn't back down, holding the baby tighter. "I'm holding him, giving him my love," she said. Zara warned, "You can't do this. It's against the law." Sarah said firmly, "I know, and I don't care." When Zara angrily said she would call the director and get her fired, Sarah said, "Call everyone. This baby cried alone for 3 hours and lost its soul. I gave him his soul back, and I won't leave him in that darkness again." Zara didn't understand the word soul, but she was frightened by the determination in Sarah's eyes and called the manager. Manager Theron arrived. He was 1,000 years old, tall, and as cold as ice. "Sarah Chen, "Do you realize what you're doing?" he said harshly. Sarah said, "I'm holding the baby because it needs it." Theron laughed. "Babies need food and warmth, not touch." Sarah shook her head. "You're wrong. Babies need love and contact. Otherwise, they die spiritually." Theron argued that the concept of spirit was unscientific. Sarah made him an offer. "Give me a week. I'll raise this baby. After a week, compare its development to a baby raised using your method. If I'm wrong, I'm ready to accept any punishment." Theron accepted this experiment out of scientific curiosity. Sarah took the baby, whom she named Zaire, to her own quarters. The first night, she laid him next to her bed, picked him up every time he cried, and sang him lullabies. Zaire grew livelier with each passing day. When Theron came for his checks, he couldn't hide his astonishment. The baby in Sarah's arms was smiling, looking around with curious eyes. Meanwhile, in the next room, the other baby growing under Theron's supervision remained silent and motionless. "That baby is alive, but there's no one inside," Sarah told Theron. On the fourth day, when Zaire laughed out loud for the first time, Theron was genuinely shaken. "Veylari babies never laugh," he exclaimed. Sarah replied, "Because they aren't loved, Theron. If they were loved, they wouldn't just laugh, they would change the world." On the sixth day, Zaire began to touch Sarah's face with his little fingers. The bond between them was so strong that when Sarah left the room, Zaire would start looking for her. The tests were incredible. Zaire's brain activity was 60% higher than the other babies, and her immune system was much stronger. "You are right, Dr. Chen," Theron finally said. "Love really is a necessity. I'll present this data to the board." Sarah shouted with joy. Theron warned, "This means fighting a 1,000-year-old tradition. It will be very difficult, but we will try." On the seventh day, the board of directors convened. 12 conservative members watched Theron's presentation. Theron presented evidence of Zaire's development and the biological effects of love. "We are an emotionless, loveless, and disconnected society," Theron said boldly. "We have lived for 50,000 years, but we are not truly living." The room fell silent. Some members argued that independence would suffer. Sarah stood up and spoke. "Love does not hinder independence. On the contrary, it empowers the individual. A loved child does not fear the world." A vote was taken, and by a narrow margin, the physical contact and love program was approved. This victory marked a turning point in Veylari history. Sarah took on a new role as mother trainer at the center. She taught caregivers how to hold babies and show them affection. A year later, all the nurseries began to fill with babies' laughter. When Zaire turned 5, he became the first child to use the word mother in the Veylari language. When Sarah explained to Zaire why he was special, she said, "You were the first beloved baby who changed everything." Zaire smiled proudly. Years passed, and Sarah grew old. At 45, her hair had begun to turn gray, but her face bore a deep serenity. 10-year-old Zaire, lying in Sarah's lap, asked, "Mother, will you die one day?" Sarah explained to him that people are mortal, but love is eternal. "Even if I'm gone, my touch will always be on your skin, my love in your heart," she said. Zaire hugged her mother tightly and promised never to forget. When Sarah passed away peacefully at 65, Zaire, now a strong adult, was by her side. Tens of thousands of Veylari attended her funeral. Zaire gave a speech at her mother's head. She taught us not only to love, but that love must be passed on like a chain. Her legacy is now in all of our hearts. Zaire took over Sarah's work and spread the touch program throughout the galaxy. 100 years passed, and Zaire had become an elderly and wise teacher. At every conference, she told the story of that brave woman named Sarah Chen. "Her greatest legacy wasn't teaching me love," Zaire said. "Her greatest legacy was teaching me how to teach love." 1,000 years later, Two massive statues were erected in the square of the capital, Crystalia. One was Sarah, the other was Zaire. Both held a baby in their arms. The inscription beneath them read, "Love is the greatest power that can change the fate of a species. It began with the first touch and will last forever." No baby cried alone anymore. No Veylari lived a life without love. Sarah Chen had breathed her soul into a planet and lit a flame that would never fade, even 1,000 years later.